I had always been the quiet one in the family. It wasn't that I didn't have opinions or feelings. It was that I learned very early on to bury them deep beneath the weight of everyone else's needs. For as long as I could remember, I was the one who kept things together, who made sure everyone else was okay. But somehow, it always felt like no one was doing the same for me. I remember the first time I noticed how different I was from the rest of them. It was when I was a teenager, sitting at the kitchen table, listening to my mother and my younger sister, Claire, talk about the latest family drama. It was always something: who was doing what, who was getting what, who needed saving. Claire's voice, sharp and demanding, would always be the loudest, as my mother soothed her with promises of support. And then there was me, quiet, tucked in the corner, silently doing the things that kept the house running. But that night, everything was different. My mother called me into the living room to talk. There was an edge to her voice that made me nervous. I couldn't quite place it. She'd been calling me more often recently, asking for help with Claire. "Your sister needs you, Rachel," she said, her voice unusually soft, yet laden with an expectation I couldn't ignore. "She's been struggling, and you're the only one who can really help her." I knew what she was asking. She always asked for the same thing: more help, more money, more time, more of me. But it was never enough. The cycle had been going on for years, and I'd always complied, despite the toll it took on me. Claire was in her final year of college, and her tuition payments had become a constant point of strain. I had been paying them for the last 2 years, silently covering the costs while my mother conveniently forgot to ask for the money. But the truth was, Claire had been living in a bubble. She didn't seem to understand the weight of what I was doing for her. She didn't see the exhaustion in my eyes, the way I'd sacrificed everything to make sure she stayed in school, to make sure she didn't have to face the consequences of her actions. "I can't do this anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to go down that road. But it felt like something inside me was finally snapping. My mother's face softened, but there was something else there too. Something I hadn't seen before. Guilt. "You're the only one who can help her, Rachel," she repeated, her voice tight. "If you don't, she'll fall apart. She needs you." I swallowed hard. I wasn't sure if she was talking about Claire or herself at that point. "She's an adult, Mom," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "She's made her choices. I can't keep carrying the weight of her mistakes." I expected an argument, but instead, my mother fell silent. Her eyes, usually so full of demands and expectations, were now dull, almost resigned. The silence stretched on, heavy and thick between us. Finally, she spoke again, her tone trembling with emotion. "I don't know what to do without you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't the one who had been asking for help all these years. I wasn't the one who had been living in this cycle of expectation and guilt. But I also knew something deep inside me had changed. I had spent so long hiding behind my role in the family, taking care of everyone else, that I had forgotten who I was. I had forgotten what it meant to live for myself. And now, I was finally starting to see that if I didn't stop, I'd lose myself completely. "I can't keep doing this," I said quietly, my voice almost a whisper. My mother stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, just as I thought the conversation was over, she added something that felt like a final blow. "You've changed, Rachel." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow in the quiet room. "No, Mom, I haven't changed. I've just finally stopped pretending." I ended the call with a heavy heart, but also with a sense of relief I hadn't expected. For the first time in years, I felt like I was making a choice for myself. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what had happened to the girl who used to do everything for her family. The girl who believed that love meant sacrifice. I thought about Claire and the mess she had created in her life. I thought about my mother and the way she had always leaned on me, expecting me to fix everything. But the truth was, I couldn't fix it anymore. I had to stop, and I knew that was the hardest thing I'd ever have to do. The next few days felt like I was walking through fog. The weight of my decision to stop supporting Claire and my mother hung heavy over me, even though I knew it was the right thing to do. Still, the silence from my family was deafening. It was as though I had broken some unspoken rule, one that had been in place for years, and now I was the villain in a story I had never asked to be a part of. It wasn't long before the texts started. At first, they were simple enough, polite even, but as the days passed, they grew more frequent. Claire's name appeared on my phone screen every morning, every evening, each message a little more desperate than the last. "Can we talk? I really need you right now. I'm sorry for everything. Please just pick up the phone." I ignored every one of them. I had no idea how to explain myself to her. How could I explain that I was no longer willing to be her safety net, to be the one who always picked up the pieces when she dropped them? It wasn't just about the tuition anymore. It was about the years of being taken for granted, of watching her make decisions that I would never have made, and then bearing the consequences for them. It wasn't just Claire's messages that filled my inbox. My mother's came next. "Rachel, please. Your sister needs you. You're all she has left. You can't just walk away from family. We're struggling without you." Each message was like a tiny, invisible hand trying to pull me back into the role I had always played. A role I was so tired of. I knew what my mother was doing. She was trying to make me feel guilty. Trying to convince me that I was abandoning them, that I was being heartless. But the truth was, I was just finally standing up for myself. For the first time in my life, I was putting my own needs first. It felt strange. It felt like I was betraying them, even though I knew I wasn't. Then, one evening, as I was sitting in my apartment, scrolling through the latest design plans for a new project, I got a call from my mother. I debated whether or not to answer, but then I saw her name flash across the screen, and I felt a strange pull in my chest. Maybe I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. I answered. "Mom," I said, my voice tired yet firm. "Rachel, honey, please don't do this," she began, her voice shaky. "We're falling apart without you. Your sister is so lost, and you're the only one who can help her." I could feel my frustration rising, but I kept it in check. "I'm not the one who's lost, Mom. I'm not the one who has to keep making excuses for everything she does. Claire has to face the consequences of her actions." My mother fell silent on the other end of the line, and I knew I had hit a nerve. For a moment, I thought she might actually understand. But then, as always, she shifted tactics. "You're being so cold, Rachel. This isn't like you. You've always been the one to fix things." I clenched my jaw. "Not anymore. I'm tired of fixing things that aren't mine to fix." There was a long pause. Then my mother's voice cracked, and for the first time, I heard real pain in it. "I just don't know what to do without you," she whispered. I had been expecting this. I had known she would try to guilt me, but hearing it from her, in that vulnerable moment, it made my heart ache. I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want to turn my back on her, but I had already given so much. Too much. I couldn't give anymore. "Mom, I love you, but I can't keep sacrificing myself for you and Claire," I said quietly. "I have to look out for myself now." The line went silent again. I could hear her breathing, heavy and uneven. "You're wrong," she said finally, her voice full of sorrow. "You're really wrong." I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing left to say. After a long, painful silence, I hung up. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring out the window at the city lights. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to go back. I wasn't going to let guilt pull me back into the cycle of giving, of being used, of being the one who always came to the rescue. I was done with that life. But the next morning, as I was heading to the office, something unexpected happened. I received a text from Claire. "I've already applied to transfer to a different school. I can't do this without you. Please help me." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of how to respond. I knew that Claire would always find a way to manipulate the situation. She was good at that. She had learned it from our mother. But I also knew that if I responded, if I let myself fall back into the trap, I would be giving up everything I had worked so hard to build for myself. It was a test I had to pass, and I wasn't about to fail. I deleted the message without responding, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had made my decision, and now I had to stick to it. The days that followed were quiet, unnervingly so. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing without a weight pressing down on my chest. My work, which had once felt like a constant distraction, became my refuge. I was finally able to focus fully on the projects that had once been relegated to the back burner. The clients I had been juggling for months now seemed to appreciate my undivided attention, and the work I was producing felt better than it had in years. But the peace was short-lived. It wasn't long before the phone call started again. This time, it wasn't my mother. It was Claire. The first time, I let it ring. The second time, I ignored it again. The third time, my hand hovered over the phone, a voice inside me whispering that I should answer. Maybe this time, things would be different. Maybe she would finally understand why I had done what I did. I pulled myself together and pressed the green button. Rachel. Claire's voice cracked before she even spoke. Please, you have to talk to me. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what to say. My emotions were tangled up in knots. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but also something softer, something I had tried so hard to bury, pity. I hated that it was there. I didn't want to pity her. She had made her choices. She had lived with the consequences. And yet, there was a part of me that still wanted to save her. I'm listening, I said finally, my voice steady but distant. I'm so sorry, Claire continued, her voice trembling. I messed everything up. I can't lose this opportunity. I don't know what to do. You're all I have left. Please, Rachel, just help me. I'll do anything. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I had heard it all before. The promises, the desperation, the broken record. I knew exactly what she was doing. I had seen it 1,000 times before. This wasn't about her wanting to change. This was about her wanting to escape the consequences of her actions, to have someone else fix it for her. And for so long, I had been that person. I can't fix this for you, Claire, I said, my voice colder now. I've told you before. You have to face the consequences of what you've done. You can't keep running away from your problems. I won't be the one to rescue you anymore. There was a long silence on the other end. I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the unspoken words that hung between us. Finally, Claire spoke, her voice small and defeated. I just don't know how to fix it without you. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay strong. You'll figure it out. You have to. You can't keep depending on me. Her response came almost immediately, though this time there was no desperation in her voice, only a quiet sadness that made my heart ache. I understand. I guess I always knew you'd get tired of it. I just didn't know it would happen this soon. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about me. This was about her. I'm sorry, Claire, I said, my voice softer now, but you have to learn to stand on your own. And with that, I ended the call. For a moment, I just sat there in silence, the weight of the conversation lingering in the room. It felt final, like a door had closed, and this time it was locked. The following days were filled with the quiet hum of my life moving forward. Work became a welcome distraction, and I poured myself into it, determined to not look back. But as much as I tried to keep my focus, the silence from Claire and my mother continued to gnaw at the edges of my mind. I couldn't ignore it, no matter how hard I tried. I spent more nights alone in my apartment, staring at the city lights outside my window, and I began to realize something I had never allowed myself to think before. I was afraid. Afraid of what the silence meant. Afraid that I might be making a mistake by walking away. Afraid that, in the end, I might regret choosing myself over my family. Then came the message that shattered the fragile peace I had managed to build. It came late one night, while I was working on a project for a new restaurant opening. My phone buzzed on the desk, the screen lighting up with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering. Rachel? Came a voice I hadn't heard in months. It was my mother. I need to talk to you. It's about Claire. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't a conversation I was eager to have, but I knew it was inevitable. What happened? I asked, my voice distant. She's been drinking again, my mother admitted, her voice thick with emotion. She's spiraling, Rachel. I don't know what to do. Please, you have to come home. She needs you. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I was back in that place, that place where I felt like I was the only one who could save her, the only one who could fix everything. But then, something inside me snapped. No, I said firmly, I'm not coming home. I can't keep doing this. I've tried, Mom. I've given everything I had, and it's never enough. You can't keep using me like this. There was a long pause on the other end, and then my mother's voice cracked. I'm begging you, Rachel. Please don't turn your back on us. I could feel the guilt rising again, but I didn't let it control me. I took a deep breath and spoke the words I knew I needed to say. I'm not turning my back on you, Mom. I'm just choosing to stop sacrificing myself. I hung up before she could say anything more. The following week felt like a haze. My days were filled with work, but my nights were quieter than I'd ever imagined. I'd spent so many years tangled in the web of my family's drama that it felt strange to be free of it, yet I didn't know how to fully embrace that freedom. Every now and then, I would find myself scrolling through social media, catching glimpses of Claire's posts, photos of her out with friends, smiling like nothing had ever happened. And yet I knew the truth. I knew what was happening behind the perfect smiles, the nights spent in denial. But then, something unexpected happened. I received a call from my grandmother, Evelyn. Evelyn was the one constant in my life. She had never judged me, never demanded more from me than I was willing to give. I had always known that she understood. Even when my parents hadn't, she did. Her house in the suburbs of Salem had always been a safe haven for me, a place where I could breathe without the pressure of my family's expectations. So when I saw her name flash on my phone, I answered immediately. Rachel, darling, I just wanted to check in on you. Her voice was warm, comforting, like a soft blanket on a cold day. How are you doing? I sat back in my chair, surprised by the genuine concern in her voice. I'm doing okay, Grandma. It's just been a lot. I know, sweetie, she said gently. I've been hearing things about Claire. And your mother, too. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. It's all a mess. I don't know what to do anymore. Well, you don't have to do anything you don't want to, Rachel, she said. You've done enough. You've been giving and giving for so long, and it's time to take care of yourself. You can't keep carrying the weight of everyone else's mistakes. Her words were like a balm to my soul. I had always known that she understood, but hearing her say it aloud made me feel less guilty for choosing myself. She was right. I couldn't keep carrying everyone else's burdens. Not when I had my own life to live. I don't know what to do, Grandma. I feel like I'm losing them both. You're not losing anyone, sweetheart, she said softly. Not really. Sometimes, people have to go through their own struggles. You can't be their savior, Rachel, and you can't let them drag you down with them. I didn't know how to respond to that. She was right, of course, but there was still that voice in the back of my mind that said I was abandoning them. I couldn't shake it. I just wish I didn't feel so guilty, I admitted, my voice cracking. I wish I didn't feel like I'm the one who should be fixing everything. Guilt is a funny thing, Evelyn replied. It can make you think you owe people things you don't. But remember this, your worth isn't measured by what you do for others. It's measured by how you take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. Her words were simple, but they hit me harder than anything else anyone had said in a long time. For the first time, I realized how true they were. I had been pouring from an empty cup for years. I had been giving without ever taking anything for myself, and it was no wonder I had nothing left to give. I'll remember that, Grandma. Thank you. You're welcome, my dear, she said, a smile in her voice. Take care of yourself, and don't let anyone make you feel bad for doing so. After that conversation, I sat in silence for a while, letting her words sink in. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity. I didn't have to be their savior. I didn't have to fix everything. I could walk away. I could choose to live my own life without the constant weight of guilt hanging over me. But of course, as is always the case, the universe had a way of testing my resolve. The very next day, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Claire or my mother. It was a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up the phone. Hello, I said cautiously. Rachel, it's Tom. I froze. Tom was my ex-husband, the last person I expected to hear from. What do you want? I asked, trying to keep the bitterness from seeping into my voice. I need to talk to you, he said. It's about Claire. I exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of my nose. I was so tired of hearing her name, so tired of being pulled into the chaos she created. But I also knew that Tom wouldn't be calling me unless it was important. What happened? I asked, my tone softening despite myself. She's in a bad place, Rachel, Tom said, his voice heavy with concern. She's spiraling, and I don't know what to do. I've tried to help her, but it's not working. I couldn't help the pang of empathy that shot through me. I had always felt sorry for Claire, even though she had caused so much of her own pain. She was my sister, after all. I don't know what to tell you, Tom, I said, struggling to keep my emotions in check. She has to figure this out on her own. I can't fix it for her. I understand, he said, but there was an underlying note of desperation in his voice. But she's not going to make it if we don't do something. She's self-destructive, Rachel. I stayed quiet for a long time, the weight of his words sinking in. I knew he was right. Claire had always been self-destructive, but now, it seemed like she was spiraling faster than I could keep up with. I'll think about it, I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. But I can't promise anything. And with that, I hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, torn between my desire to help and the knowledge that I couldn't do it anymore. I had already given too much. I had already sacrificed too much. And if I didn't let go now, I was going to lose myself. The days following my conversation with Tom were suffocating. I could feel the weight of the guilt pressing down on me, no matter how many times I told myself I had done enough. I had been a good daughter, a good sister, even a good ex-wife. But all of that came at a cost. The more I thought about Claire's situation, the more I felt the familiar tug at my heart. She had always been the one who needed saving, and it was hard to shake the feeling that if I didn't act, something terrible would happen. But then, I thought of all the times I had stepped in and ended up empty-handed. I was caught in a loop of doubt and frustration until one afternoon, when everything came crashing down. I was sitting at my desk, going over the final drafts for a major project, when my phone rang. I saw the name flash across the screen, and my stomach twisted. It was my mother. I had been avoiding her calls for days, not because I didn't love her, but because every conversation with her felt like I was being pulled back into the storm that I was trying so desperately to leave behind. I took a deep breath and answered. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on?" "I don't know how to say this, Rachel," she started, her voice shaking. "But Claire, she's in the hospital. She overdosed." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of my desk as I processed what she had just said. "Is she okay?" My voice was barely a whisper. "She's stable for now," my mother replied, her voice cracking. "But she's asking for you. She wants to see you." I didn't know how to respond. A part of me wanted to rush to her side, to be there for her like I always had been. But another part of me, the part one had been nurturing for months now, screamed that this wasn't my responsibility anymore. I stayed silent for a long moment, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. "Rachel!" My mother's voice broke through the fog in my mind. "I need you to come. Please." I could hear the desperation in her voice. It was the same desperation that had been a constant in my life for as long as I could remember. And for a moment, I almost gave in. But then I remembered what Evelyn had said to me. "You can't pour from an empty cup. If I went now, I would be giving everything of myself again, and in the end it wouldn't make a difference." "I can't," I said quietly, the words feeling like they were being pulled from the deepest part of me. "I can't do this anymore, Mom. I can't keep sacrificing myself for her. I can't fix her." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear my mother's uneven breathing, the weight of her disappointment pressing through the phone. "I don't understand you, Rachel," she said finally, her voice cold. "You've always been the strong one. You've always been the one to step up. And now you're just giving up on us." "I'm not giving up," I replied, my voice firm. "I'm choosing myself. I've spent my whole life trying to be everything for everyone else, and it's never enough. I can't keep living like this. I need to take care of me now." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my mother breathing, but she didn't speak for a long time. "Fine," she said finally, her voice laced with bitterness. "If that's what you want." I didn't know what else to say, so I hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of my mother's expectations, of Claire's endless demands, had finally been lifted. But it was also terrifying. I had just cut myself off from everything I had known. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the city skyline outside my window. It was hard to believe I was really doing this, letting go, walking away from the people I had spent my life trying to save. But there was also a strange clarity that came with it. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was choosing myself, not as an act of selfishness, but as an act of survival. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run, something I hadn't done in months. The cool air felt like freedom in my lungs, and with each step, I felt like I was shedding a layer of guilt, of self-doubt. I had spent so much time being weighed down by the past, by the mistakes I had made and the people I had tried to help. But now I was free. Free to make my own choices. Free to live for myself. As I ran, I thought about everything that had led up to this moment, the years of giving, of sacrificing, of putting others before me. And I realized that, for the first time, I was allowed to want more for myself. I wasn't responsible for fixing anyone else anymore. When I returned home, I felt different. Lighter, even. And then, as if the universe was testing me once again, my phone rang. It was Claire. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "Rachel!" Her voice was hoarse, fragile. "Please. I need you. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I don't know what to do without you." I closed my eyes, hearing the desperation in her voice, but I didn't let it pull me in. Not this time. "Claire," I said, my voice steady, "I'm not coming to save you anymore. You have to figure this out on your own." There was a long silence before she spoke again. "I don't know if I can." "I know you can," I replied softly, "but you have to do it for yourself. I can't be the one to carry you anymore." I hung up before she could say anything else. And this time I felt at peace. The weeks that followed were a blur of quiet moments and small victories. Each day felt like a step further from the life I had left behind, a life filled with guilt, obligation, and endless compromise. At first, there were days when I missed the familiarity of being needed, the constant calls and messages from my family. I wondered if I had made the right decision, if there was still room for me in their lives after all the distance I had put between us. But as the days went by, those thoughts became fewer and farther between. I found myself waking up earlier each morning, feeling lighter. The weight that had been so familiar for so long, of trying to fix everything, of being the one people turned to when things went wrong, had finally lifted. I started to focus on my work in a way I hadn't in years, diving into projects I had pushed aside in favor of taking care of others. My team at the company noticed the change in me. They noticed how engaged I had become, how I no longer ran on fumes but instead took the time to recharge, to cultivate the life I had always wanted for myself. And then there was Tom. Our relationship had always been easy, too easy sometimes. In the months since I had made the decision to stop being everything for everyone else, I began to see the difference it made in my relationship with him. He was the one person who had supported me without question, without demanding anything in return. He wasn't the type to ask for much, but I could tell that he had been quietly waiting for me to choose myself, to stop putting my family's needs before my own. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city's skyline fade from golden to purple, he turned to me and spoke the words I had been waiting for. "You know, Rachel," he said softly, "I don't think I've ever seen you this at peace. You've been through so much, and I've watched you struggle with it all. But now you seem free, and I'm proud of you." His words didn't just fill me with warmth, they filled me with validation. He wasn't just supporting me out of love or obligation. He was proud of who I had become, and that was something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I had spent so long believing that love required sacrifice, that to be loved, I had to give more of myself than I had left. But Tom reminded me that love, real love, is not about giving until you have nothing left to give. It's about being seen for who you are, not for what you can do for others. That night, after Tom kissed me goodnight, I sat in bed, reflecting on everything that had happened in the past year. I thought about my family, Claire, my mother, even my ex-husband, and I realized that for the first time, I wasn't defined by their expectations of me. I wasn't defined by the roles they had assigned me. I was just Rachel, and that was enough. The next morning, I received a letter. It was from Claire. I hadn't heard from her since our last conversation, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But as I opened it, my heart clenched. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea for me to come back into her life. It was simply this. Rachel, I don't expect you to forgive me, and I don't expect you to come back. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying. I'm in therapy, and I'm taking it one day at a time. I hope, someday, we can have a real conversation about everything. But for now, I just want you to know that I see what you did, and I'm grateful for it, even if I didn't show it before. I'm working on myself. I sat there for a long time, holding the letter in my hands. There was no rush to respond, no need to fix everything in one go. Claire was trying. That was enough for now. It was funny, I thought, how the hardest things were often the ones that set you free. The hardest decision I had ever made, the decision to let go, had ultimately brought me the peace I had been longing for. I wasn't waiting for my family's approval anymore. I wasn't living to make them proud. I was living for me. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. As the years passed, Rachel continued to thrive. Her business flourished as she became more confident in her own skin, refusing to let the shadows of her past overshadow her future. She maintained a respectful distance from her family, but she wasn't angry anymore. She had learned that forgiveness wasn't about waiting for others to change. It was about giving herself the space to heal. Claire eventually did reach out again, and they did have that conversation. It wasn't easy, but it was real. There were no more illusions about what family should be or what she owed them. Rachel had learned the hard way that her worth didn't come from being a martyr, and that lesson had given her the strength to move forward. As for Tom, their relationship deepened, and their future together seemed brighter with every passing day. Rachel had found balance, something she had never had before. She had found the courage to build a life that was hers, and hers alone. And for the first time, she felt truly free.